During the station break, I've been doing some comparisons between just jotting them down here, the Nazis of the 1930s and 40s and the Nazis of today. The Nazis of today being the people who are telling you what it is you can and can't think, what you can and can't say or believe. That's why they're Nazis. Welcome back to Steel on Steel. John Loeffler here with you. Let's see. The Nazis back in the days of the Third Reich had an orthodoxy. Well, the Nazis of today seem to have that as well. The Nazis of then had censorship of dissenting ideas, and the Nazis are seeming to do the same thing. The Nazis had official propaganda arms, and the Nazis of today have the same thing. The Nazis back then managed to take over the colleges and institutes of learning in the Third Reich, and the Nazis of today are doing the very same thing. The Nazis had their brown shirt mobs called the Sturmabteilung, meaning the storm detachment, that ran around beating up and in some cases killing deserters. And the Nazis of today seem to have the same thing. The Nazis had book burnings, and we see the equivalent of that on many campuses where posters of people who are trying to give an alternate point of view frequently have them ripped down, and other similar thing done by the Nazis of today. The Nazis of then fired dissenters from their jobs, and the Nazis of today are doing the very same thing. Gee, not a lot of difference, is there? And the answer is, why, no, there isn't. The three areas where the Nazis are very active today is, number one, censorship, either on college campuses or now the social media have jumped in and decided to become electronic Nazis by censoring all manner of ideas that they don't wish to have. Number two, the rewriting of history. And number three, the shame and defame industry. Since we can't prevent people from talking technically under the First Amendment, they're going to try to shame and defame you into silence and to being ostracized by financial institutions, by social institutions, and therefore marginalizing you to the edge of society, which, by the way, that's what the Nazis of today are doing. The Nazis of Nazi Germany did exactly the same thing to Jews and to Christians who protested the regime. Not much difference, is there? Daniel Malek's my guest right now, author of Agony and Eloquence, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and A World of Revolution came out last year. His article in the New English Review in defense of American history and heroes, and even Jefferson himself pointed out that today is the province of those who are living today. It's not the province of those who have died, who have come before, but it is the obligation of the present generation to preserve the knowledge of what we did before and how we got to this level where we are today. And when you engage in this decoupling of the living from the past, the abandonment of all of the obligations to past, to the history, to the truth of what history is and what it means, it's exactly as you pointed out in your article, the failure of the Jacobins during the French Revolution. I mean, you have to take history with its glories and its spots. Even Abraham Lincoln had flaws.
True. I mean, Lincoln said, look, if I can win the war and save the Union without ending slavery, I'll do it. If I have to end slavery, end the war, and save the Union, I'll do it. And also his idea before his election was sending the freed slaves to Liberia. Jefferson was very ambivalent. He talks about human freedom and held slaves, hundreds of them at Monticello. These are difficult things for folks to really deal with. I get that. But we can't eradicate these people and all the great things that they did because there's some ambivalence or failure in their history.
What do you think the dangers of that are?
John, I think the dangers are a total deconstruction of the foundations of the country, the concepts that make us American, the value of the founding documents, because now they're all tainted because they're written and signed by slaveholders. So if everything is seen through the prism of slavery and what one did to oppose it or what one did to uphold it, then all these other things are then lost. We have to accept the fact that compromises were made to build the Union and sustain it, and hopefully to eradicate the system and retain the country, which they failed to do. That's why we have the Civil War. I think there is a terrible danger in the fact that folks are not speaking out or not knowing how to formulate the case is one of the reasons why I wrote this piece. If people feel the same way, they can use those images in the article. They're so self-explanatory. And some of the logic points that I make will help them make their defense when similar questions are asked by their friends or colleagues in whatever context it happens to occur. When maybe politicians will see it and be able to make the case from a podium or an official position and get the message out to the country, which is, look, we get it that this is a difficult history for all of us, but it is what it is. And because we are unhappy with it, doesn't mean, A, we have the right to eradicate it, or we have the capability to nullify their errors and purge the crimes of our past from our history. It's impossible.
You know what's interesting is, if you think about it, if we had made slavery a do-or-die issue when we were trying to draft the Declaration of Independence, as you say, the country as we know it in its history, 13 colonies unifying into one, would never have happened. You would have had a northern states country, and you would probably have had a southern states country, which means that slavery would have rolled forward in the new southern country, unopposed, and possibly continued much further than it did. Okay, so we went through X number of years between the Declaration of Independence and the outbreak of war in 1860. Then we had to endure segregation, which, by the way, came about because a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. We did that for 100 years. And finally, we put that behind us. And as you said, we've moved so much further beyond this, it's gone. But you know what I maintain? Because I've been traveling a lot around the country, talking to people of all different racial groups. I find we can talk to each other. And this division that they're telling us we have, they're manufacturing it. It's much more manufactured by the media and certain elitist groups than really exists out here in the real world.
I totally agree with you. And, I'm a former Bostonian now living in the South, and I have to say that I've never experienced any racial strife, issues, problems since I've been here. In fact, I think race relations in the South, as far as my experience is concerned, are healthier than they are in the Northeast. And as you say, I've never had any issue interacting with anybody of any color. I have colleagues and friends who are black, brown, yellow, blue, green. It doesn't matter. I think most Americans are colorblind. Pardon the pun, because I am literally colorblind.
By the way, that is a microaggression trigger. You do know that, right, on college campus, what you just said.
Part? Yeah. Which part, John?
Oh, the fact that you have friends who are fill in the blank.
Oh, tell me how. I don't even follow some of this stuff.
Yeah, some college professor, I think he was at Dartmouth, I could be wrong, came out with a list of things that trigger microaggressions that you can't say.
Oh, I can't say those words.
Right, you can't say those words.
Oh, dang. I wish somebody would send me a list of all the banned words, like all the banned books, all the banned words, all the banned theories, so I can at least be in compliance so I won't get in trouble. So I guess I have to kind of semi-fake apologize for my microaggression.
I should get a microaggression alarm that goes off automatically here on the show.
Oh, I need that. I need that for sure. My daughter will say to me, Dad, you're triggering me. And I'll say, what does that mean? If I say something, how come you don't have homework tonight? And she'll say, you're triggering me.
The idea is, because you have given me a trigger, I can't control my emotions, because the new upcoming crowds of millennials are much more into emotionalism and relations than they are into logical thought. So you find this, you'll hit a trigger word and then somebody goes, boom. And usually they run on, you can set your stopwatch, just flip it when they start it. It runs about 3 minutes to 3 minutes 30 before they run out of steam and realize they just made a horse's patoot of themselves.
Right. I think you're very insightful on this, John. I can use that word, insightful, right?
Yes, you can use, wait a minute, hold on. I'm checking.
Check the list.
I'm checking. Hold on a minute. Oh, it just grew about 5 more words while we were talking.
Oh, no. Okay, then I'll talk really fast. I remember when I was in college years ago, critical thinking and tolerance for opposing views and bravery in the face of opposing views, which would allow you to argue and not get overly emotional, like how you're supposed to comport yourself in a trial, a courtroom. As an attorney, you have to be all evidence-based and use critical thinking and logic, and emotions are not supposed to play a part. And it's all flipped upside down now. I think it's very disturbing. So I think much of the blame has to be in the academy as well as in the popular culture, which is so troubled. I can use that word, I'm sure, right? Troubled.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
You never know. That's the problem. The list is unending.
There's got to be a website. Maybe you can send me a link later.
So where do we need to go with this as we wrap out right here? Talking to Daniel Melick right now, author of Agony and Eloquence, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and a World of Revolution.
Well, first of all, thank you for interviewing me. Thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it very much. I hope you have a chance to read the book, and if you do, please let me know what you think. Regarding the article on New English Review, I've had a lot of positive feedback from it, much more so than I've had in other venues where I've made a similar argument on different websites where different audiences were very critical of essentially the same argument being made. But I think because the illustrations complement the case to defend historical statues and our history itself and our heroes, despite the fact that they're flawed, to show us that we're a passing entity as the living generation. We come, live, and then we go. We're supposed to retain these things as caretakers. This is why Jefferson used the term usufruct in his letter. It's a very obscure kind of legal term. It means we have freedom of action as the living generation, but we have a duty to sustain and retain what the country is, to leave that for those who follow us. And I think we're doing a very bad job right now as a generation, if I can talk about people as a generation, which may be a trigger, I don't know. But it brings me a great deal of sadness to see these men who were not perfect, and women too, I'm sure, being pulled down or carted away and condemned. And I just am very concerned as to where this will end and that terrible mistakes are being made. I hope we take a more rationalist and realistic view of our history and appreciate, most importantly, the lessons that we learned and the long road that we've traveled to get where we are today.
And we're built on top of it. That's the important thing. In other words, we have achieved where we are to the point we can look back and say all of that was wrong, and they had to work that through. We stand as the beneficiaries of that working through. Some of it was nasty, some of it was good, but that is history, and there is no culture in the history of the world that is perfect or has not gone through similar things, not one.
No, I have to say, I think the word nasty is a trigger word.
Oh, crud. What can I say? You know what really bothers me is the people who really say the worst about our culture or the country and everything. They're not leaving, because I don't understand this. If it's so bad here, well, okay, where's your exit visa? You heading out next week or what? Where are you going to go?
I'm with you entirely. If you hate it so much, don't move to Canada or wherever it is that you like. But if not, help us fix this. I mean, this is a problem we need to deal with, and we need to wake people up and say, look, have a little bit of a backbone and thicker skin. Deal with the fact that nobody's perfect, neither are you, and let's accept people for what they are. Who could ever suggest that the standard is perfection? Just absurd.
And, of course, the chief illogicity, which is really irony, is that the very same voices as a part of this not say movement that are telling us how bad we are defending the right of other people to come here virtually unlimited, because those people know it's better here. It's a total contradiction. Anyway, and that's the kind of nutty situation we're in. So you plant your 2 feet on the ground and you insist on logic and reason. What a strange notion. Daniel Malik, my guest, Agony and Eloquence, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and a World of Revolution. His website, danielmalik.com. We're doing the analysis of not say ism and what it is we can't say in this culture and the people telling us we can't say it. Coming up next, a Scottish woman comes to this country to study at college. Boy, was that a shock when the not says got a hold of her. We're at steelonsteel.com. I'm John Leffler. The program is Steel on Steel.